Hello, so this is the DuoLingo supplement video for the bonus skills flirting lessons 1 through 2. I'm going to go ahead and give a warning that I wouldn't go through this section or these lessons until I think it's in section 4 that modal verbs are introduced. The verbs that are in this section, I think there's only like 3 that are regular, and then the rest, it's not that they're irregular. I mean, they are irregular, but they're a special kind of irregular. They're a different type of verb. They have different grammatical rules. So that's why I would wait to do these lessons until you're at least through modal verbs, which I believe is in section 4. The other verbs, the supplemental prefix verbs, I haven't gotten that far through section 4. I just know that modal verbs is in section 4. I'm sure those are littered throughout some of the other verbs, so we will get to those. And I will, in this lesson, I will briefly go over modal verbs and supplemental prefix verbs. But again, please don't do these lessons until you're already through modal verbs, simply because it will be a whole lot easier if you've already done that grammar lesson. So, because there's a whole section dedicated to modal verbs instead of it just being part of another one. So, we'll get started. Like my normal vocabulary, if it's, I'll say the German word first, and then the English word, and then repeat the German word. If it's a noun, instead of repeating it, I will say the plural form of that verb, or that word, not verb. It's late. So, to start off with, anrufen, to call, anrufen. Das Auge, eye, die Augen. Ausgehen, to go out, ausgehen. Besser, better, besser. Dich, you, dich. Dürfen, may, or to be permitted, to, dürfen. Finden, to find, finden. Hier, here, hier. Kennenlernen, to get to know, usually someone or something. Kennenlernen. Können, to be able to, or can. Können. Küssen, to kiss. Küssen. Lieben, to love. Lieben. Mit, with. Mit. Mir, me. Mir. Möchten, would like to. Möchten. Nett, nice, kind, or pretty. Nett. Schlau, smart, shrewd, or astute. Schlau. Die Schöne, or der Schöne, beautiful or handsome. So like if you were saying, hey beautiful, to a girl or a woman, you would say die Schöne. And if you were saying, hey beautiful or hey handsome to a guy, you'd say der Schöne. Schöne, schöne. Not much difference in the pronunciation depending on how you pronounce your R's at the end of a word, but the articles and the ending will indicate whether you're talking to a girl or a guy. Der Stern, star, die Sterne, der Still, style, die Stills, süß, sweet or cute, süß, tanzen, to dance, tanzen, und, and, witzig, funny, amusing, or odd, witzig, and wollen, to want, wollen. Okay, like I said, I will briefly go over modal verbs and separable prefix verbs. A modal verb is a verb that usually indicates there will be another verb later in the clause, like I want to read, I like to eat, I can ride a bike. So usually the modal verbs are always indicative of a second verb in the same clause. So the grammar behind it is the second verb will always go unconjugated, so the infinitive form will go at the end of that clause. So for example, I can find that. Ich kann das finden. So whereas in English we put the second verb right after the first one, that is not how it is in German. So that's why it's Ich kann das finden, and das is put in between the two verbs and the second one going at the end. So, may I call you? Darf ich dich anrufen? Again, the being a question, the first verb goes in the front, conjugated, and the second one, the modal verb goes in the front, conjugated, and then the second verb goes at the end, unconjugated. He wants to kiss you. Will dich küssen. Will is the conjugation of wollen, modal verb, and so the second verb comes at the end. Separable prefix verbs are similar, and in the sense that part of the verb goes at the end. Separable prefix verbs are normal verbs that have prepositions added to the front of them. So the prepositions added to the front change the meaning of the verb. So an example not used in this flirting section is for example, when getting on and off the train. To get on the train is einsteigen. To get off the train is aussteigen. And I forget the meaning of steigen right off the top of my head, but it means something different as well. And so those little prepositions in front of the regular verb are going to change their meaning. So the examples we have in this section, I think, are anrufen, ausgehen, and kennenlernen. I think that's it. So for example, I call you. Ich rufe dich an. The preposition is an, and it goes at the end, just like the second verbs for modal verbs do. So, ich rufe dich an going at the very end of the clause. Throwing in a modal verb to show that what happens to these separable prefix verbs when there's two verbs in a clause and they're put in second position. May I call you? Darf ich dich anrufen? So like I said when going over the modal verbs, the second verb will stay unconjugated in the infinitive form, which is why anrufen in this question stays as anrufen. And the preposition an is not separated. So, I'm going out. Ich gehe aus. Again, aus is the preposition, and it is at the end of the clause. So, do you want to go out, on the other hand, because there are two verbs, and ausgehen is the second, then it remains unconjugated and at the end of the clause. So, willst du ausgehen? Speaking of conjugations, we'll move on to the verb conjugations. There are 11 verbs, quite a bit. So, anrufen, to call. Ich rufe an, du rufst an, ruft an, wir rufen an, ihr ruft an, sie rufen an. Ausgehen, to go out. Ich gehe aus, du gehst aus, geht aus, wir gehen aus, ihr geht aus, sie gehen aus. Dürfen, may or to be permitted. Ich darf, du darfst, sie, es darf. Wir dürfen, ihr dürft, sie dürfen. Now this is the first of the modal verbs. Something else that's special about modal verbs is that the ish and the SES form are the same, and the first three forms, the ish, do, and SES form, will all have a change in the first vowel. For example, in dürfen, the U umlaut becomes an A on the first three forms. And then the last three forms are conjugated like a regular verb. That is the basic conjugation for modal verbs. It can vary, I think, but it's pretty much standard. And the vowel will not always change to the same vowel. So you just kind of have to know. Finden is thankfully regular. So, ich finde, meaning to find. Ich finde, du findest, findet, wir finden, ihr findet, sie finden. I said it was regular, and it is. If you notice the stem, find, in the do and the SES form gets an extra E, simply because if you tried to add the ST right after the D, it's a lot of consonants right in a row, so they add a little E to make it easier to say in the do and the SES forms. Otherwise, it is still a regular verb. So kennenlernen, to get to know, is actually I don't really know what it's called, but I call it a double verb because it's two verbs in one, and it's conjugated like a separable prefix verb. So while kennen means to know, and lernen means to learn, basically meaning to learn to know you, when you're saying getting to know someone, oh, I can't wait to get to know you, this is the verb you use. So again, the conjugation is just like a separable prefix. So, and lernen is regular, kennen is irregular. So it's, other than that, it's a regular verb. So, ich lerne kennen, du lernst kennen, lernt kennen, wir lernen kennen, ihr lernt kennen, sie lernen kennen. So because it's like a separable prefix verb, the kennen is unconjugated because it's acting as that preposition. even though it is another verb, it's not conjugated. So können is another modal verb. It means to be able to or can. So ich kann, du kannst, kann, wir können, ihr könnt, sie können. Küssen, to kiss. Ich küsse, du küsst, küsst, wir küssen, ihr küsst, sie küssen. Lieben means to love. Totally regular as well. Ich liebe, du liebst, liebt, wir lieben, ihr liebt, sie lieben. Another modal verb. Now, this modal verb, however, does not have a vowel change. Möchten, would like to. This verb differs from, well, I'll get to it in a minute. Okay, so ich möchte, du möchtest, möchte, wir möchten, ihr möchtet, sie möchten. Tanzen, to dance, is it's a regular verb. The only difference in the endings for do and SES, I guess it is slightly irregular. The only difference is that because there's that Z in the stem, tanz, if you added an ST to the end of that, it wouldn't sound very good. So that's why in the do and the SES form, it's both just a T. So the do form is really the only form that changes, and it's just missing an S. So, ich tanze, du tanzt, tanzt, wir tanzen, ihr tanzt, sie tanzen. And the last modal verb introduced in this section is wollen, to want. And this one is different from möchten, would like to, because just like in the US, it's a lot more polite to say would like, rather I would like something rather than I want something. I, from Texas, went to school in the South. Would like is way more polite and more often used. And when you're asking someone to do something for you, or when you're talking to your waiter, anything like that. But yeah, so wollen is to want. Ich will, du willst, will, excuse me, wir wollen, ihr wollt, sie wollen. So, this video is kind of long, but we had some grammar to go over and 11 different verbs, so we had a bit to do, but I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, well, I guess a couple things about German dating. I've been told, I haven't experienced this myself, but I have been told that in Germany, it is perfectly regular for the girl to seek out the guy instead of the guy seeking out the girl, which is what is typical in the US. So I think it's interesting that they're flocked between the countries. At least that is what I've been told. I'm perfectly happy with my boyfriend, won't be seeking out a different one in Germany. So, though I have flirted in Germany before, not this trip around, but a different one, when I wasn't dating the guy, the lovely guy I am now, but my flirting was done in English. So my experience with German flirting is actually pretty non-existent. But I hope you enjoyed this, and if you ever flirt in German, I hope you're able to use some of the phrases you learn here. So, have a good night.